Hi ladies, this is Sharon from Sharon's Nursery, and I'm coming on to do a video about Mae and Ed that I promised everybody a couple weeks ago. When I'm talking about my granddaughter Mae, I'll say Mae Olivia, and when I'm talking about the older Mae, I'll just say Mae so that people don't get confused. In front of you is a picture that Mae and Ed, that I was taken of Mae and Ed with me probably about 15, 16 years ago. And here's a picture of Mae with my oldest daughter Heidi when she was a baby. And here's Mae Olivia's mommy, Beth, with Ed a long time ago. And here in front of you is a picture that Mae and Ed's daughter Linda made for Mae Olivia when she was a baby. And it's got young versions of Mae and older versions of Mae. And right here, it says, good things come in small packages. Mae was a very tiny woman. She was only 4 feet, 11 inches tall. She didn't say a lot, but when she did, it was mighty. One time I remember when just before my husband and I got married, we were having an argument, and Mae stepped in and said, why don't you guys go take a walk? And I've talked about that before, and I think it saved us from breaking up. One time when I hadn't been driving very long, Mae never drove a car, so she needed rides to the grocery store. So one time, her and I got in the car, and I was either trying to back out of the garage or pull into the garage. I can't remember which. And I scraped the car on the side of the garage, and she sat in the car and she says, "Boy, you've done it now." And found out later that when their daughter Linda was learning to drive, she did the same thing to the other side of the garage. So we both made a nice little scratch on the car, learning to back in and out of the garage. Ed was born in 1911. He was an orphan. He never knew who his parents were. And I think he remembers when cars were first on the road. I could be wrong about that. So hopefully I'm not wrong about that. Ed was my dad's Cub Scout leader, and Ed knew my great-grandparents as they both lived in the same town. And one time Ed showed me their house. Ed used to work on like a cow farm and apple orchards and things like that. And when my husband and I were first married, Ed was a janitor of a department store, and he would get out maybe 10 o'clock at night. So my husband would meet him, and they would get in the car and they would drive around and go out for coffee and just sit and talk for a long time, to the point where you would wonder where they were. But they used to have a good time. Ed used to go walking in the woods with Jim, and where they lived, there was a thing called the potholes. And one time my husband and Ed were taking a walk, and Ed fell on the rocks, and he just laid there for a few minutes and got up and carried on. He was a tough man. He would get up on the roof and at 90 years old and work on it and things like that. Few things about my kids with them. When my kids were really, really little, probably about once a month, maybe twice a month, we'd pack the kids in the car on a Friday, and we would get in the car and go up and stay the whole weekend with Mae and Ed. I'm hoping that we didn't drive them crazy. My daughter Heidi, one time when after Mae was gone, My daughter Heidi lived in Washington State, and one time she came for a few days, and she went to Ed's house, and she stayed a few days with him, and she cooked for him, and just basically loved him. And when it was time for them to say goodbye, they wrapped their arms around each other, and it was quite touching. Ed, whenever we would all get together, especially saying grace, he would cry. So Heidi took care of him for a few days. My daughter Beth, her husband Dan, his first memories of Mae and Ed was one time we were there for a Christmas celebration, and Ed had eaten a candy, like a Hershey Kiss or something, and he wadded up the little tin foil and he tossed it at his wife. And Dan was just so surprised that Ed would do that. And with Kate, my youngest daughter, her husband, that's her husband, Sean, when he was just her boyfriend, before any of us had ever met Sean, Kate took Sean up to the nursing home where Ed was, and they spent quite a long time with Ed, talking to him, and Sean has a way of making anybody feel special. So there's that. Ed and Mae one time went to Ecuador to visit their daughter Linda, because she lived there for a while. Let me think what else there is. I think that's about all. These people meant so much to my kids, and to me and my husband, and like I've said before, my daughter Kate and Beth, when they were young, well, late teens, they used to bicker about who was going to get to use the name Mae for one of their children. And when Beth was pregnant with Mae Olivia, Kate said to her, "You can use that name if you want, because I've found another name that I'm going to use." So that's how Mae Olivia became Mae. And this is the lady that she's named after. And I hope that, I feel like I'm shaking or something, but I hope that this is fine and everybody learned something, and we all miss these two wonderful people.